box button and the Q&A panel button. The chat box button is open for you to communicate with us or amongst yourselves if you see someone that you want to say hi to, or if you have any comment, you can put it in that chat. But if you have a question that you would like answered by the science panel on this call, then please open the Q&A panel and open it in there. The Q&A panel should open up a box like this. You'll see a list of questions that have been asked by participants here, and then you'll see an answer from the docents team underneath that question as we field them throughout the talk. So if you would like to ask a question, please do so in this box. Type your question in the box below and send, and then a member of the docents panel will field that question, or we will ask Dr. Smarsh at the end of the talk to elaborate. For those of you joining us over YouTube, we also appreciate your input as well. So if you have a question, you should see something like this, right? The YouTube stream on the left and the chat box on the right. If you're joining us on YouTube and you have a question, please put your question in the chat box, and a member of the docents team will add it to the Q&A panel function as well. So once again, I'd like to welcome Dr. Grace Smarsh to the stage. Today, she will be talking to us about the UN Ocean Decade, International Partnerships and Opportunities. For those of you who may not know, the UN Ocean Decade is an effort to generate transformative ocean science solutions for sustainable development of ocean technologies. There are thousands of contributors to the UN Ocean Decade from various countries and research groups around the world, including the research program on Maritime Acoustic Environment, which works to establish a comprehensive science-based program to measure and characterize the acoustic environments in the ocean at a regional scale. So now I would like to welcome Dr. Grace Smarsh to take over and share her slides to give her lecture today.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the introduction, and to Discovery of Sound in the Sea for having me today. I'm going to try sharing this here. Okay, can you see my slides now? Okay. So thank you so much for that introduction. As noted, I am a AAAS Science and Technology Policy Fellow at the U.S. Office of Naval Research. And a big part of my portfolio during my time as a fellow has been supporting USG efforts within the UN Ocean Decade, the Decade of Ocean Science for Sustainable Development, particularly by supporting the Ocean Decade Research Program on the Maritime Acoustic Environment. So today, I'll share some of the things I've learned about the UN Ocean Decade, what's going on there, share about the acoustic program, and also other opportunities for you and others to get involved if you're interested. We're heading down towards the midpoint of the Ocean Decade, so there's definitely been some movements in this space, especially with a large convening conference last month, the first in-person conference for the UN Ocean Decade in Barcelona. So there's been some energy and movement recently. So one thing to note, as a fellow, I am not a representative of the federal government. Okay, we're going to start off with a couple of polling questions. If my wonderful hosting group can help out with that. One thing I'd like to know from those listening in today is, who has heard of the UN Ocean Decade? And then also, are you involved somehow with the UN Ocean Decade? Do we have our polling results?
We still have a few more coming in. Hold on.
Okay, thanks.
Can everybody see the results now?
See them here pop up. Have you heard of UN Ocean Decade before? 63% says yes. And are you involved? So 87% said no. Okay, great. This gives a bit of a starting point for where to go with this talk. But I'm going to continue to introduce and give backgrounds about the Ocean Decade, including some of the different the history and some of the organization of it as well. I found for myself it's taken a bit to learn about some of those different areas. So thanks again for joining. I'm going to launch into the next slide here. So first, I'm going to talk more about, hold on, my slide's not moving. There we go. What is the Ocean Decade? So this has been a question time and again about what it is, maybe part of it, but what is it really? How did this come about? So the Ocean Decade is the UN Decade of Ocean Science for Sustainable Development. And it is a essentially was proclaimed in 2017 by the United Nations General Assembly. And it was mandated by the United Nations General Assembly that the Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission and UNESCO would create and run this effort, this UN Decade of Ocean Science for Sustainable Development, to help meet the Agenda 2030 Sustainable Development Goals. So if you look at Sustainable Development Goal 14, that's life below water, along with the other Sustainable Development Goals. So in order to help meet Sustainable Development Goal 14, life below water, and some of the other Sustainable Development Goals of the 2030 Agenda, this whole initiative was started. And so it's this 10-year framework, essentially, to help stimulate ocean science and knowledge to help support a healthy ocean system and create new opportunities for sustainable development of the ocean. So the vision of the Ocean Decade is the science we need for the ocean we want, and the mission is transformative ocean science solutions for sustainable development, connecting people and our ocean. So we think of what is Ocean Decade? It's a large framework. It's a convened framework to bring together stakeholders and different sectors. So to bring together scientists and decision makers and users of the ocean, governments, academics, NGOs, and so forth into one place to develop the knowledge that is needed, that excellent critical scientific knowledge, and also partnerships. So a big theme of Ocean Decade is partnerships. Ocean Decade from high level creating partnerships, and also within efforts and actions of the decade, creating partnerships in order to accelerate and harness ocean science to have a better understanding of the ocean. Since its debut in 2021, according to the recent Barcelona statement from the Ocean Decade Conference, this is the largest global ocean initiative that has ever been undertaken, according to UN Ocean Decade. So what is the Ocean Decade? We can think of it in some ways. We can think of it in terms of the 10 challenge. It's 10 challenges that need to be addressed to deliver science we need for the ocean we want. It's endorsed actions that have been endorsed by the Ocean Decade as doing something to meet those challenges. So there are over 1,200 endorsed actions and activities by partners from 63 actions from countries to get the science that we need for the ocean we want. And we can think about people. Ocean Decade is 77,000 people currently, including 4,500 early career professionals. What is Ocean Decade? Let's get a little bit into some of the different groups and the organization of the decade. So the Ocean Decade has the central decade coordinating unit. That decade coordinating unit is of the Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission Secretariat, and they're responsible for basically coordinating all the reviews, the roadmaps, for working with other pieces of the Ocean Decade to make sure that everything happens within that Ocean Decade, everything that's needed. So it's that central coordinating body. But then from there, we have the national decade committees. So different countries have formed that helps bring together some of the efforts and the ocean decade actions within the country. And then there are decade collaborative centers and decade coordination offices. So those are organized into thematic and also regional offices and centers. So bringing together different actions and different partners working in a certain area. If they're working on promoting better data sharing efforts, or ocean prediction, or fostering ocean observing and trying to address needs in ocean observing. You have those different offices and collaboration centers that are trying to bring together and support those actions in a structured way. You have the regional centers, so efforts working in a certain ocean basins, for example, coming together to try to tackle challenges within that basin. You also have decade implementing partners, so those are non-UN regional groups too that help enact other areas of the decade as well. What is Ocean Decade? There are 52 programs in Ocean Decade, and those are large efforts. They are long-term and they are largely global in nature, addressing a number of challenges. Those can host projects. There are over 300 projects that are more discrete, running for maybe 1 to 3 years, trying to tackle a specific problem. Then you also have many contributions and activities that also help relate to addressing some effort within the Ocean Decade as well. There are 62 countries involved, and these efforts span the 10 different challenges. And then we have additional groups as well. So there are informal working groups. There's the Ocean Decade Alliance, so high-level support from different countries. The Foundations Dialogue that tries to bring together philanthropy and stakeholders to support the Ocean Decade. And what's most relevant broadly is the Ocean Decade Network. So an online platform that is active, that has over 8,000 people from over 173 countries that are there sharing and posting efforts and initiatives and staying connected and trying to meet these different challenges of the Ocean Decade. Okay. I'd like to go over the 10 challenges for a moment here. So the 10 challenges have been a focus recently, especially with the recent conference and the past 6 months. And I will dig into that a little bit more. So some of you will already have learned about the 10 challenges. So the 10 challenges include understand and beat marine pollution, protect and restore ecosystem and biodiversity, sustainably feed the global population, develop a sustainable and equitable blue ocean economy, unlock ocean-based solutions to climate change, increase community resilience to ocean hazards, that's challenge 6. And we can think about these in how it can be related to acoustics and to sounds. So for example, protect and restore ecosystem biodiversity. Many people are using acoustics or to monitor wild populations, understand population and movements of marine life, for example, using sounds and soundscapes to understand the health of ecosystems. Challenge 4, develop a sustainable and equitable ocean economy. So with all the industrialization and changes in the ocean environment, we know that that can have an effect on the maritime acoustic environment as well. And so we need good research in order to understand how that acoustic environment is changing and what actions need to be taken as well. There's been interesting research that's showing more and more about how we can learn more about climate change through acoustics as well. The 4 last challenges include expand the global ocean observing system, create digital representation of the ocean, skills, knowledge, and technology for all, and change humanity's relationship with the ocean. And so again, you can think of many different ways that acoustics can tie into these different challenges. So for example, with expand the global ocean observing system, last fall, the implementation plan for the Ocean Sound Essential Ocean Variable, a now accepted essential ocean variable of the global ocean observing system, that implementation plan was released. And so now there's opportunity to think more about, now that ocean sound has been recognized as an important informative variable of the ocean, how will that then be implemented in, more locally, but also in global efforts to better have the information and the science we need for the ocean we want. So as I mentioned, last month in April was an exciting time because we had the Ocean Decade Conference. That was 3 days, also amongst full week, Ocean Decade Week. That included over 1,500 participants from 124 countries, online viewers, 120 satellite events that took place on site at the conference or all around Barcelona. Every went around Barcelona was another Ocean Decade satellite event. Those challenges were clustered into these themes, having science and solutions for clean, healthy, and resilient ocean, sustainable and resilient ocean economy, a safe and predicted ocean, and an inspiring, engaging ocean for all. And a lot of this conference was taking those related challenges, clustering together, having panelists and discussions diving into how can those challenges be addressed within these themes to get the science and solutions needed, as well as focused targeted events to further discuss maybe areas of policy or maybe certain groups or regions, for example, in addressing these different themes. The main outcome is the Barcelona Statement. So they put together a list of priorities and different areas of action for the Ocean Decade in the coming years. The next conference should be in 2027, so there will be another opportunity to revisit all these priorities and areas and see, how is the decade progressing and what needs to be done at that time as well. And all this is also online available for reading and digesting further. Leading up to the conference was the Vision 2030 process. So during the course of this past year, each challenge had a working group led by 2 co-chairs with experts working somehow related to that challenge, coming together and trying to drafting these white papers to understand what are the gaps and needs and solutions to address those challenges. What needs to be done? How can we connect those scientific efforts to higher level global policy or frameworks? So there was an open process at one point in the wintertime where anyone could go online to the Ocean Decade site to Vision 2030. You could download and read those white papers and provide input. So it was kind of a somewhat open process to try to get the perspectives from the broader community of what needs to be done really to address these challenges. Those white papers were also discussed in depth at the conference. They're still available online. And you can learn more about, well, this challenge, what are we looking at here? They do mention acoustics in some of them. So if you are here at DOSITS with that acoustics lens, challenge 2, for example, protect and restore ecosystems and biodiversity, recognized in their white paper the role of acoustics in understanding ecosystems and biodiversity as important and relevant technology. So there we can look more at what they've drafted in terms of what are the other technological needs? What about, what are they saying about capacity? You can see here, they pointed out this working group and the input from the international community that you need to have greater organization and to implement solutions. So needing to have critical collaboration, science, to bring together different people to get that science up to the higher levels of governance. So they're very nice white papers that really go in depth into the different challenges that are all still available. And there's also a summary outcomes report from the Vision 2030 process. So it takes each challenge and then it brings out some of the output from those different challenges. Okay. Also during Ocean Decade Week, I just wanted to highlight some of the other things that were happening there. Some of the conversations that were happening there. So there were targeted, really great events talking about things like the BBNJ, the conservation and sustainable use of biodiversity beyond national jurisdiction, trying to connect Ocean Decade to BBNJ. How can that be used to implement this? The Global Biodiversity Framework, looking at the Partnership for Atlantic Cooperation and the All-Atlantic Ocean Research Innovation Alliance to see how they can come together in cooperative, solution-based ways to further promote, ocean science. There was the International Seabed Authority discussing scientific objectives at the UN Ocean Decade, and the World Ocean Assessment as well. And beyond those kind of more global frameworks and policy discussions, we also had some really targeted events looking at different groups like NGOs, indigenous knowledge, certain regions, and what needs to be done in specific areas. And so at the decade, they tried to bring both together that science that's needed, connecting to those higher level policies and frameworks, as well as getting more people into the room, into the table in terms of what other needs are and what their perspectives are. And that's, again, is kind of the idea behind the decade, is that convening framework. Some announcements that they had from the recent conference. They announced some new programs. There's Sustainable Ocean Management programs in Africa. There's a new Decade Collaborative Center focusing on sustainable ocean economy. There's this new ocean matcher tool. They're trying to connect philanthropy with endorsed actions. It's not yet available for everyone yet, but they're working on this, this tool. New funding opportunities for African efforts through the Belmont Forum and New Cities and Ocean platform. And again, the Barcelona statement, there's a whole list of priorities, but a lot of themes were needing more engagement from different sectors, increasing investment. That was a big theme besides partnerships, collaboration, engagement is sustainable financing in order to continue the Ocean Decade, and continuing to build awareness and taking advantage of opportunities to further the Ocean Decade effort. All right. So now I'm going to jump into the more into the acoustic space of the Ocean Decade Research Program on the Maritime Acoustic Environment. And this is a program from one of the early years of the decade. And it's an action of the Subcommittee of Ocean Science and Technology, Interagency Working Group, Ocean Sound and Marine Life in the US. So there was early support for basically the inception and creation of ODME from the interest and support within the US. So for example, we have this quote from President Joseph Biden: "Our engagement in international efforts such as the United Nations Decade of Ocean Science for Sustainable Development reflects the priorities and values of my administration to ensure that ocean science delivers greater benefits for the American people, the people of the world, and international ocean ecosystems." And that was during the proclamation on National Ocean Month in 2021. You also have Ocean Decade in the Ocean Climate Action Plan that was released last year. There is a U.S. National Committee, and they've also been playing an important role in convening ideas and U.S. efforts, and have this wonderful report on cross-cutting themes for U.S. contributions to the Ocean Decade. And there's also support within the Ocean Science and Technology Committee. So there's an Opportunities and Actions report with Ocean Decade that helps support endorsement of this wonderful program. I don't really need to sell like why sound to this group. I think everyone probably in the audience understands why sound. Well, when it comes to why sound in the Ocean Decade, well, again, recognizing that sound is a feature of every environment, and it interacts with the physical aspects of the environment, the chemical aspects of the marine environment. There's many biological sources, and ocean acoustics is interdisciplinary. So we know that it can tie well into applications of like economic, environmental, and national security importance. And furthermore, what's very exciting about ocean acoustics is additionally the changes in technology, advancements of approaches to doing research that has continued to open up exciting new research and discoveries that tie into the Ocean Decade. So, for example, the the increasing knowledge of the sounds of soundscapes in Antarctica, for example, due to glacial calving. More knowledge on how sounds are informative of habitats such as coral reefs and their health. And as I mentioned before, other movements such as the release of the Ocean Sound Essential Ocean Variable Implementation Plan by the International Quiet Ocean Experiment and SCORE and POVO. Got some sounds playing here. I don't know, can you hear my sound, the sounds playing from my screen? Not sure.
No.
Okay, that's fine. Then I won't address it. Okay. And moving on. So when we look at the premise of the Ocean Decade Research Program, essentially understanding the acoustic environment, the combination of all the sounds within that area, within the soundscape, as modified by its interactions with the environment. So recording those signals, collecting that information, doing the research and analysis on it, and be able to characterize and model and predict the acoustic environment that can then also be used in decision spaces and by policymakers. When they've envisioned the ODMAE, the Maritime Acoustic Environment Program, the idea was to be able to further address some of the different challenges of the decade with hosted projects and collaborative partnerships across sectors. So when we look at MAE and breaking down that soundscape to physical, anthropogenic, and biological, we have these different challenges that kind of tie into these different areas of the soundscape. And then with projects, these projects can then address these different challenges areas to help fill those gaps, to help reach those outcomes with excellent research and other related activities. And this is sort of what's been going on with this program. So currently there are 8 endorsed actions, and these projects that are hosted by the Maritime Acoustic Environment, they do cover most of the challenges of the Ocean Decade. So each one of these, you can see the different challenges that the project seeks to address. And when you take a closer look, you can spot a few things. So first of all, you can see that these projects are, the point of contact is in a different country. So we've got Mexico, New Zealand, Spain, US, Australia, Canada, and Belgium here. But again, the big premise of the Ocean Decade is partnerships and collaborations. And so these projects themselves also, some of them have a lot of collaborations and partnerships that are international. So it's a rather global set, all things considered, just from these projects. You have some projects that are focusing more on understanding the biological environments through and with necessary addressing needs such as technology or databases, such as the Global Library of Underwater Biological Sounds. Projects like the acoustic detection and production technology for endangered right whales, quantitative tools for responsible marine energy, unraveling the dynamics of ocean soundscapes, all are addressing additional technology or analysis tools that are needed to better understand the acoustic environment and to have tools and research needed to also meet sustainable development goals and challenges. This program supports both passive and active acoustic projects. So not just recording sounds in the environment with passive tools, but also like this project, Numerical Seabed using hydroacoustic digital twins, is an active acoustics project that is looking to have excellent mathematical models to understand the seabed using hydroacoustics. Some projects like Ocean World of Sound Mesoamerican Reef also looks at engagement with the communities and training opportunities to better help connect local communities to the ocean acoustic environments and to further be able to adopt those tools. Okay, so here's kind of a snapshot of the program within the framework. So here's Ocean Decade Research Program, And then we have all the hosted projects here that engage with the program. The program is US, so it liaises with the different US groups, such as the US National Committee. But it's also linked with the Decade Coordinating Office, Ocean Observing, and that's linked up with the Global Ocean Observing System. And so again, these coordinating offices or collaborative centers are working to coordinate different programs to try to look at what kind of gaps are there, what's going on, facilitate partnerships and collaboration, help elevate the needs of programs to higher levels within the Ocean Decade. So the Decade Coordinating Office of Ocean Observing meets semi-regularly with other programs that have said that they address Challenge 7 as well. So we have Marine Life 2030, OASIS, Deep Ocean Observing System, CBID 2030, OBON, and so forth that are able to get to the same room to talk about needs related to ocean observing in these different contexts. And then Ocean Observing, this office links to a community practice and to Working Group Challenge 7. So that's kind of just a frame shot of how some of these different groups are connected within the Ocean Decade. The Ocean Decade research program on the Maritime Acoustic Environment has had some engagement activities in the past since the start of the decade, including several workshops. And out of one of those workshops came the interest and ideas to have an exhibit at the Ocean Decade Conference. And this was successful and involved the Ocean Decade Research Program and the Maritime Acoustic Environment, hosted projects, and partner JPI Oceans and some of their endorsed projects as well, to come together and create an exhibit, which ran for 4 days during the course of the Ocean Decade Week. And the idea was to create sort of an immersive and interesting, engaging exhibits with opportunities to listen to soundscapes and visualize soundscapes, while also connecting to the soundscape and having opportunities to connect with hosts that were there. We had at least 6 co-hosts who were present that week, all there and engaging with conference goers and the public to raise awareness of sound, and also talk to conference goers more about, have you thought about sound and what are you working on? Have those kinds of conversations to better kind of connect and see, what does the ocean science community also think about roles of acoustics, and try to foster those kind of connections and gaps. There's also going to be a virtual event that's going to be more policy and S&T science technology focused on underwater acoustics, primarily noise. That's going to occur later this summer. And there's a QR code at the end of this talk, so you can link to that as well and join that policy webinar if you're interested. Okay, so the exhibits was structured to showcase some of the different projects with these attractive posters inside this room we had in the museum, the Natural Science Museum, across from the conference center. So visitors and conference goers could walk through, look at some of the project's imagery, and there were actually listening stations at these locations where you could put on headphones and listen to the soundscapes and sounds that the projects had prepared. And there was a couple places with visuals, with video, like this rolling spectrogram on the TV in the background from the Listen to the Deep Ocean project. Another screen that was a video compilation of artists with their compositions from natural sounds, videos of actually going out and doing research under the water, short informational clips, so people could sit and kind of take in that as well. And so basically with this exhibit, we kind of have a soundscape represented where we've got projects that focus in different areas: biological, active acoustics, noise, showing different parts of the soundscape that people could explore as they walk through. So this was an effort with, as I mentioned, hosted projects, including Global Library of Underwater Biological Sounds, the Numerical Seabed Project, Ocean World of Sound, Lab of Applied Bioacoustics, JPI Oceans, and 2 of their projects, Deuteronoise and Sonora. And so we got a lot of positive feedback. People enjoyed looking at understanding the diversity of sounds and learning more about. There's so much going on under the surface related to sounds that they had never considered. And we did have a variety of different visitors, primarily students and experts, but also people from NGOs, artists, a number of interesting conversations with artists, people from government, policy experts, tourists, educational or teacher focused individuals, some folks that worked in ocean literacy, for example, which is another area of the Ocean Decade, all came by and had insightful conversations with co-hosts. Okay, so for Ocean Decade research program on the Maritime Acoustic Environment, to wrap up a few things of this program. So what is ODME? It's a program that supports collecting information from the ocean to analyze, interpret, assess, predict, and share to meet Ocean Decade challenges, outcomes, and goals. And it's a platform. It's a platform for ocean acoustics in the Ocean Decade with a growing global network that builds and expands upon ocean acoustic science with efforts spanning across sectors. So there's government, academia, NGOs within just this one group. Opportunities going forward for the rest of the decade, partnering. Like I said, this is kind of a theme of the decade, is building partnerships. So with the exhibit at the conference, we thought a lot about as I said, what's going on with other efforts in other areas of ocean science, since underwater acoustics is interdisciplinary and it can provide complementary or additional information. Capacity building with new technology, new sensors, more accessible technology. How can that be incorporated into observation systems, and how can those efforts or new networks be supported? Again, more support. Acoustics being a bit of a niche in ocean science, building more support for this area within this global framework. And then within this framework, again, to connect, elevate interests and needs in ocean acoustics. So I'm going to leave off the rest of the talk just to talk about a few additional opportunities in the decade beyond, here's these convening frameworks in different spaces where you can engage. Here's some more places to engage if you're interested in Ocean Decade and learning more. So it's not a funding call, as probably many here have discovered. If you submit a project proposal to the Ocean Decade, it's not for funding, it's for endorsements. And if you become endorsed, then you can join this network in a different kind of way. As I've mentioned, you can have opportunities to further connect, collaborate, form partnerships, share your science, build your science, communicate what you think is important, messaging about your science is related to the Ocean Decade, or your needs if you're a user or decision maker. And entering the Ocean Decade framework. You can learn more about what's going on there, what can be useful or helpful for the things I need to think about and make decisions about. Some additional groups, there are communities of practice and there's informal working groups. If you can register to be an Ocean Decade expert, and they have important roles of kind of guiding the Ocean Decade, they can be called upon when documents are being drafted by the DCU, when projects or programs are submitted for endorsement, experts may be called upon there as well. And anyone who's an expert can sign up for this as well. You don't have to have a project in the decade to engage in that way. And there are also many events that are open for the public. So if you're thinking like, this is kind of interesting, but I don't want to submit something for endorsement, or I don't want to engage in other ways, there are many opportunities from webinars, training opportunities, other kinds of activities such as exhibits, for example, happening globally. So it is a place to kind of get connected, learn more, and engage in other ways as well. I will make a note because the 7th call for actions is currently ongoing, and the ODME program always is open to new projects to host. If you are interested, then you go to the Ocean Decade website, and you can go to the guidance and you can see what programs are soliciting projects and for what scope. And the application, not as long as a full proposal, but it's there. You have to fill out, what your project is about, but also connect your project to objectives, outcomes, and challenges, and why your project fits within that program you want to be hosted by. And you need to address the endorsement criteria. The endorsement criteria for endorsement includes showing how your project helps fulfill the Ocean Decade challenges and achieving Ocean Decade objectives, that your project accelerates generation or use of knowledge, understanding the ocean, is co-designed or co-delivered by knowledge generators and users, ensure that all data and knowledge are provided in open access, shared, discoverable way, that your project strengthens existing or creates new partnerships, especially internationally or across diverse ocean actors, contributes towards capacity development, overcomes barriers to ocean diversity and equity, and collaborates with and engage local and indigenous knowledge holders. So these are the endorsement criteria that are used during the review of projects during the endorsement process. And you do not need to meet all of the endorsement criteria. You just need to show how you meet certain ones and then say why you don't meet others. And then address the different objectives and outcomes. So we went over the decade challenges quite a bit, but these decade challenges say you're addressing marine pollution, understanding marine pollution, then you're probably leading into addressing the outcome of having a clean ocean, a healthy and resilient ocean, or a productive ocean, a predicted ocean, a safe ocean, an accessible ocean. And the objectives, which I didn't talk about before, are just the identifying knowledge for sustainable development and generating comprehensive knowledge and understanding and increasing the use of knowledge. So identifying knowledge is important, creating more knowledge, and then increasing the use of it. So those are the three objectives that we're looking for. Other opportunities, as I mentioned, activities and contributions. So again, this gets into things like webinars, information on, actually there's some grant drafting information here as well for different initiatives. Other kinds of contributions, financial in-kind support. Interestingly, here we have the ocean acoustics education expertise. That is a contribution to the Ocean Decade, and it's a study by the National Academies addressing the workforce and education needs for ocean acoustics, and that's considered to be an endorsed contribution to the Ocean Decade. So if you have something else, you have a key publication or a key webinar that you think meets the Ocean Decade and you would like to highlight it in the space, you could also submit that as well to the Ocean Decade. And finally, I want to touch base on a couple other things. Personally, I think the Ocean Decade is a really great place if you're early career. So there's a very active early career ocean professionals program, and they have very strong networks. So if you look at this image, you have these nodes all over the place. So it's very global, and you have the main program network with different opportunities and activities and networking engagements. And then you also have activities within nodes too. So like myself, I am by US ECOP standards, I am an ECOP. It's been within 10 years since I finished my last degree. And I've been seeing from this program that it's a quite active place, including at the conference, trying to bring those young professionals and also youth, such as the Youth Advisory Council, into more of the space of the decade and get connected. So there's even a nice mentoring program. So if you're like a PhD student or a master's student looking to finish your degree and you're thinking like, okay, I've got this specialization in science and done really great work there, but maybe you're interested in different sectors, you can find a mentor in different sectors through some of the programs of ECOP. And then also you could check out your national committee and see what kind of engagement they have as well that's available within your national committee. Okay, so I'll leave it at that with this quote from Dr. Jane Ochenko at the UN Ocean Conference 2022, which is that science does indeed provide data, evidence, and knowledge to sort out fact from fiction. It helps us understand how the world works, how it's changing, and why. but it does even more. It helps us understand the likely consequences of the choices in front of us, and it provides solutions and hope, but only if we listen to and use that science. And so I'll leave off with that. Here's my email down here if you want to reach out with anything Ocean Decade ODMAE questions, and then our QR code for our follow-up virtual policy panel event.
All right, thank you, Grace. That was awesome. Really informative, really interesting. Sounds like there's a lot of ways for people to get involved at different levels. We have a couple minutes for Q&A. There's only one question left in the chat, but yeah, if anyone has any last minute questions, please enter them in the Q&A box now, and if then I'll just take over sharing my screen for the exit. Grace, do you mind stopping your screen share?
Oh, yes.
All right. So thank you to everyone who participated today. If we'll keep an eye out for any questions in the chat. Can everyone see that? Sweet. Let's see. Scott Veers asks, are there any related major events related to acoustics planned in the next few years?
Within the Ocean Decade specifically?
I believe so.
So in the next few years, for any major ocean acoustic events, decade specific, I don't know yet, but I guess we will see post-conference, after going over more insights from this conference, what may be the next steps, including acoustic specific engagement. So the ODME has thought to have some irregular engagement and reached out about that. So I assume and hope that there will be in that regard. Besides the virtual policy panel coming up in a couple of months.
Thank you. And we have one more anonymous question. What types of projects would you like to see apply under the UN MAE program?
What types of projects? So the ODME supports, is interested to hear from anybody working on something related to acoustics that ties into the Ocean Decade to foster this growing collaborative connection amongst different projects, and also the external scientific community. So it would be interesting to have more projects related to some of the other challenges, like research related to sound and climate change, for example, or the deep ocean and acoustics, or some that, from the conference, there are artists and ocean literacy and other folks also working on acoustics are interested to have those kinds of efforts as well to further connect ocean acoustics in an engaging way to the external community. So Challenge 10, for example, is Changing Humanity's association and views with the ocean. There's also a lot with, again, changes with industrialization of the ocean and the blue economy. I think there's a lot of space to have additional projects working in that sphere as well to join the program and further connect. So if you're doing interesting, exciting research and supporting also the use of that research as well, use of science related to acoustics, I think that ODME would want to hear about that or from you.
All right, thank you very much. I think that's all the time we have for Q&A. If there are any last minute questions, Grace has graciously provided her email. If not, you can reach out to us. And then thank you again to everyone who participated today. You should be seeing my screen now. It should show the professional development certificate. You will all receive an email after the webinar concludes today. There will be details in the email for the professional development certificate for everyone who is registered for the previous webinar, this one, as well as the next two in September and I believe October. We also ask that you take the DOSIS webinar survey as well as fill out the questionnaire. That helps us improve our process for these webinars and make them better for the audience as well. And again, please join us for the next webinar. The next webinar is going to be September 18th at 12 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. And it will be a talk on multi-beam echo sounders. So it's going to be pretty interesting. So we hope to see you all there. With that, that concludes today's webinar. Thank you again, Grace, for your talk. That was really interesting, and I hope that inspired everyone to get more involved in the UN Ocean Decade.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. Thanks for those who listened in, attended, and asked questions. And feel free to reach out if you have additional questions.
All right. Well, thanks, everyone. That concludes today. Have a nice afternoon, morning, wherever people are joining from. I hope you all enjoy the rest of your day.